I have been in this industry literally since it began. Started out as a ConnectWise partner, actually. I was working in what is now called managed services back in the day. And I founded the National Society of IT Service Providers a few years ago. And I would encourage you all, if you have another screen open and you don't want to pay attention to me, go to NSITSP.org and browse that while we're talking. So you can see that it's real and it's live and we're actually doing things. So today I want to talk a bit about kind of some of the issues that we face as an industry and kind of how we got here and where I hope we can go going forward. The first thing is that we have a lot of challenges. So as you all know, there's no surprises. Ransomware has just exploded and become a completely new animal and a new challenge in the last 5 years. It used to be that a ransomware was, you'd have to figure out a way to pay somebody a few $100s. Now it's millions, and you're literally fighting the entire economy of some of the nations in the world, including Russia, China, North Korea. Ransomware is a very serious thing, and as a result, you're stuck on the front end, right? You have to defend your client. You have to educate your client on security is not what it used to be. Recovery is not what it used to be. You have to work with insurance companies. And in fact, sometimes you have to work against your client with the insurance companies and sometimes against the insurance company with your client. And then you're being told by the federal government that you can't actually begin repairing anything until the authorities are involved and on site, and the insurance company won't pay out if you start recovering a system in the wrong order. And it's just getting harder and harder for anybody to choose to be in this business because it's so difficult. And on top of all that, we have regulation and legislation coming down the pike. And there are some people who say, "Oh, Karl, you worry too much." And since the first time I heard those words 3 years ago, over 250 bills have passed or regulations have been put in place with regard to privacy that you have to be the one who does the reporting on, and you have to be the one who implements and make sure that your clients are compliant. So it's real and it's here. We also have, in the last 3 years, a higher than normal attrition rate. We have always got people who are leaving the industry because, they got to be 70, they were done with it, or they've been working for 25 or 30 years. But we had also a higher number of people that chose to say that during the pandemic, I'm done. Like, that's it. I'm going to take one step closer to retirement. And we also have people who don't want to take on the new challenges with regard to security and privacy and so forth. And so they simply don't want to be part of this industry anymore. And the result is that we've got like a 30% turnover in the last 3 years. And normally, believe it or not, that takes 4 or 5 years. And so we have a higher than normal turnover, which means we also have some new people coming into the industry at a somewhat higher rate than normal. And so these people basically have never heard of what we do. And if you think about it, if you were, say, 18 or 20, 25, getting out of school, starting your business, you would have no reason to know the term managed services. Managed services by itself doesn't actually mean anything. You think you're a computer consultant. You think you're an IT nerd or whatever. And so how you define yourself is different. And so it's almost a miracle that you would stumble upon the term managed services and begin using that term to begin your search. If you go to Google and you put in IT consulting, you have to learn that these people, you and me, have a different name for what that is. And so historically, people have just gotten into IT. Many people on this call, myself included, I just happened to be better than anybody I knew at spelling IT. And so I got into it and decided I could make a living at it. And so we haven't had standardized training. I will bet there are no two people on this call who have taken the same path to where they got here today. It's virtually impossible. Some of us get training because we sell Cisco or WatchGuard or SonicWall or whatever. Some of us get training because we want to be Microsoft certified or Novell certified back in the day or whatever. And so some of us go to CompTIA. We have lots of different ways that we can get trained, including some formal training. Today, probably the best so-called formal training is happening at community colleges, where they're training people to pass actual exams that they might take someday in the real world. But we haven't traditionally had internships or apprenticeships as part of our industry. And those are pretty normal things in most industries. And now we're seeing a bit of a bump, meaning an improvement, because people are getting into the industry because after the pandemic, they have lots more opportunities and people are much more comfortable working remotely and feeling like that's part of the normal course of doing business. So let's talk about kind of the context of managed services, because we are not all the same people, right? Some of us are from enterprise and some of us are from mid-market, and of course, lots of folks in small and medium businesses. And a lot of people use MSP as a generic term. And so that has led to some problems because many people sell break fix and call themselves managed service providers. They do whatever the hell they want, which is fine, but they call themselves managed service providers. So if you're an actual MSP, if you take control of your client's technology, if you take ownership of it, and you are responsible for everything that's related to technology, well, your reputation is being affected by other people who do a different kind of business. And there's not much we can do about that. But you also have good actors and bad actors. Right now, the federal government is actually suing some MSPs and some of their employees because they've discovered that there are MSPs who are selling their clients' personal data on the dark web. There are people who are really bad actors when it comes to managing their business. They treat their employees like crap. They don't follow through on the contracts they've signed. They don't deliver the services that they are paid to deliver. And again, some of them, they provide break fix, but they call it managed services. So they really have break fix for a flat fee. And all of that hurts your reputation, whether you like it or not. And, some people get very defensive, like, oh, I'm already professional. What can you do to make me more professional? There's nothing you could do. I'm already, professional. That's great. But if you're a professional in an industry with a bad reputation, you have a bad reputation. And if I were to say to you, hey, you know what, we should all emulate the automobile sales industry, you would all say, no, right? I don't want to be in that industry. I don't want people to think of me that way. But that's what happens when we have bad actors among our own numbers. So we have challenges from the outside and challenges from the inside. And to be honest, it's not all our problem. Sometimes you have clients who will not pay for a firewall, will not pay for a backup system. And when you go on Facebook and LinkedIn and Reddit and you look at the groups and you see there's a whole lot of people that are saying, I cannot do business with people who are like this. And that's reality. There are people who are like that, and you have to figure out how to walk away from them. But regulators don't know the difference between a good client and a bad client. And regulators are biased to take the side of the consumer, which means they are biased against you and me, the sellers. Tiny bit of history. So in 2020, the state of Louisiana, the Secretary of State, Kyle Ardoin there, decided there are too many cases where we pay somebody to manage the IT of a state agency, and then they have ransomware, and there's no backup, or there's no working backup, or there's downtime for a week or a month. And basically, he had a right to say, what the hell is going on? And so they pushed legislation that defined in law in the state of Louisiana MSP and MSSP. And I say define. They misdefined those things as people who provide IT services to the state of Louisiana. So thankfully, it didn't apply to most people, but it is the first model legislation of what an MSP is in the legislation of any state. So skip ahead a bit. I remember being in Nashville on July 4th, 2021, and my phone was blowing up with reports of people having problems because of the Kaseya attack. And lots of people, lots of servers were down all over the country. And I remember hearing the media reports of this saying things like, well, it must have been poorly administered. These people must not know what they're doing. Why would you outsource your IT? Why would anybody hire somebody to take care of their computers for them? Why would anybody use these dangerous tools and allow their clients to be compromised? And it was clear that the media didn't understand anything, not one single paragraph of what was actually happening. They didn't understand the technology. They didn't understand the industry. And so basically, there was nobody who understood it, who got time on the radio or on television to actually explain what was going on. And the media made no attempt to find anybody. So once again, there was an opportunity for us to say, well, wait a minute, we need a seat at the table when people are talking about us. You may have noticed a little while back, a couple years ago, CISA came out with a white paper for your clients. I hope you all downloaded this and distributed it to all your clients. It warned your clients against doing business with you. It basically said, here's the risks that are associated with doing business with a managed service provider. This is about a 20-page white paper intended for every small business in America. Now, in the last couple of years, every single state legislature has at least one committee with the word cybersecurity in its title. And now there are thousands of bills. In 2020, last time I have numbers for it, there were over 250 cybersecurity related bills proposed in US state legislatures. And you can look at the National Council of State Legislatures, which is ncsl.org, to go tracking legislation. This is happening. These bills are coming. And so we can't pretend that the problem isn't there. So I wrote some blog posts way back then, and I proposed what I call the 9 pillars of transforming our industry into a profession. You know, our industry is really only about 50 or 60 years old, and it is time for us to think about ourselves as a truly professional industry and not just something where anybody who can spell IT can print it on a card and go into business for themselves. I was talking to my daughter recently. She had been in real estate for about 5 years, and she wants to make a change. And so she's scheming about, well, if I become a vet tech or a veterinarian, I have to do this, this, this. And if I take this path, I'm going to do that. And I go to this school or that school. This one is certified. This one has certain exams. This one, the classes are all valid. And this one I have to challenge, you know, through tests and whatever. It was a long, lengthy discussion about what it takes to become a veterinary technician. And I told her, man, you know, you should go into IT because all you have to do is print up a business card on Vistaprint and you are an IT consultant. And unfortunately, that's what many people have seen our industry as. So here are what I consider the core pillars of a successful business and an industry that builds successful businesses. The first thing is you have to have a profitable business model. If you don't make profit, you're not going to stay in business very long. And I will say with one caveat, and that is when I started training people and writing books, I looked around and I noticed many people run their businesses off credit cards. And Paul Dipple and his group will say on and on and on every time they put out a report, 25% of the people in this industry do not make a profit, which means they're either going out of business or they're living off of cash flow and credit cards. And that is not a successful, sustainable business model. So we need to promote a sustainable business model. And I think, in my opinion, managed services should be maintenance focused. Backup and maintenance are the foundation of that. I think we need a strong emphasis on education and certification. And, you know, there's lots of stuff out there, but it's all spread all over the place. And I don't really much care what certifications people get, but I would like to go back to where we were 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I think everybody on this call who was in business back then was a Microsoft certified professional, and you were probably a Microsoft certified partner. And there hasn't been a really good standard way for people to step back into that world of certification. A lot of people are certified with Cisco or with other people, but we need to really push this as a way for us to brag to each other about our competence and to demonstrate that we know what we're doing. We also need strong ethics. Right now, there's a discussion about whether or not a major player in the industry should be allowed to take public domain software, build it into their system, and not compensate the people who design the software. And no matter where you come down on that, that's an ethical discussion I'm happy that we are having in our industry. There are people who are unethical in our industry, and we should have a standard code of conduct that we promote. We also need to defend client systems. There are people who literally install something that they don't think is ever really going to stand the test of time or an attack by someone, and they take the money and they leave and they walk away. Now, clearly those are not managed service providers, but defending a client system means we have to at least offer a backup system, whether they choose to buy it or not. And then you have to think about what our greatest challenges are, which today frequently involve insurance companies, but they also involve other bad actors and some problems that we have with regard to regulation and other things going on. So regulation is going to happen, and this is both at the statutory level and at the state and federal levels. The way that's divided out becomes pretty clear. Right now, the federal government is dealing a lot with privacy issues, and they are leaving contracts to the states, which is probably appropriate. So what you're going to see is 50 states creating their own laws, rules, and regulations around our industry, and that will not be standardized across the United States. So privacy, the federal government's already tackled that, and you are now responsible for assuring your clients are compliant, whether you wanted that to be part of your job description or not. We also need to cooperate with the insurance companies. And this is a little bit harder because it's really hard to find, there's this hierarchy in insurance, and it's hard to find the people at the top who actually can help you make these decisions. But basically, we should be working with insurance companies. It's in their best interest for clients to be offered and to buy working disaster recovery systems. And those clients should be able to get a discount. Some of them can't buy insurance at all. Some MSPs can't buy insurance at all. So, it's like this mini industry is growing up to help MSPs buy insurance. We should be the good guys in this. We're the ones who have to secure the system, and we're the ones who have to respond when something happens. We should be seen as people who are helping out the insurance industry in this manner. We should not be seen as somebody who is opposed to them. And so that's a coalition that has to be built because it doesn't exist. And finally, we need to build a pathway to the future. At the end of the day, we need a way to on-ramp people into this industry so that they grow up knowing what is professional, what is ethical, what is the right way to do business, and the most fundamental things that you have to do to make sure that you have good systems in place, whether that's documentation or simple backup. But we need to onboard people so that they are professionals in our industry. So I'm going to talk about a few things that need to be addressed with regard to fixing this. The question comes, well, can't we just fix it ourselves? Maybe. That's part of what the NSITSP was founded for. There isn't a lot of motivation for self-healing. What's interesting, I just got off a call where somebody made the comment that more than any other industry, IT is one where if you got 4 or 5 people together or 500 or 600 people together and somebody said, I have a problem, the most common response is to say, well, have you tried this and have you tried that? It is not to say, you're my competitor and I will never talk to you. right? I mean, look at your own group, right? You exist because you're trying to help each other solve problems. So the impetus for this is in place. Self-healing is an ethic that we support very strongly in this industry. And yet, here we are with all these bad actors and all of these challenges. The first question I'm going to get is, what's ASCII doing about this? And the second one is, what is CompTIA doing about this? We have tried very hard to engage these folks. ASCII, to be honest, is a for-profit business, and solving the problems of the universe is not part of their charter. They are not opposed to us in any way. They're happy to have people talk about us. But at the end of the day, they exist to help people connect to vendors and to help them find good solutions and so forth and so on. It's sort of like, just because I want to save the whales and you want to clean up pollution doesn't mean that either one of us has got the wrong charter. Maybe both of those things need to get done. So it's not ASCII's job to fix the universe. CompTIA, many people argue, it is their job. They are a very large nonprofit, about 123 million, I think, at this point. And their job is to help with certifications and to help build community. Their job is not to actively negotiate with the government or help represent this industry to the government, the media, or outside groups. It's simply not part of their charter. They did have a lobbying arm a few years ago. Some of you may have been involved in it, but their lobbying arm was funded by their largest partners. So if you wanted to be part of the lobbying arm at the time, your annual fee is $100,000. So the people who were funding that were Google and Intel and Microsoft and HP and Apple. And they were, for example, lobbying against the right to repair. Well, most CompTIA members make a living repairing things. And so eventually they saw the conflict and they got rid of their lobbying arm. So now, as recently as the last time we had an NSITSP meeting, we had somebody on from CompTIA who said, look, we are not in the lobbying business anymore. That's not what we do. So we don't have anybody to represent us among those groups. There's lots of other groups as well. None of them have the charter to approach professionalism, ethics, and the improvement of the reputation of our industry. We also have a media industry that completely misunderstands us. And the media within our industry, if you think about the magazines that you read, they are all funded by vendors. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it means that there are certain problems that they cannot address publicly because they can't ever say anything that the vendors would be offended by. And so certain topics simply are not being discussed. Some of the things where people are talking about anonymously on some of the boards with some of the vendors, you will never see on the stage at any show, anywhere, for any organization. And it's simply because they cannot do anything that the vendors wouldn't like. And again, there's nothing wrong with vendors. I love vendors. They're a key piece of what made this entire industry and this community come into existence. And we absolutely have to have vendors, and they have to have us. So the question is, who has the vision of the future and wants to make it happen? Well, nobody had, and that's why I put together a call a couple of years ago, and over 200 people showed up for a webinar on what to do about the problems in our industry. Today, we have 800 members of the National Society of IT Service Providers. We are literally this week, we are 2 years old officially. All of our board and committees are elected. We're having new elections starting in August. If you want to run, if you are a paid member, you're welcome to run in our elections. All of our positions are elected, and everybody serves for a 2-year term. Last year we had half the people elected for 1 year and half for 2 years. So half of them are standing up for election this year for a full 2-year term. And then after that, basically about half of the leadership is elected every year. We have quarterly online meetings by Zoom. Those are generally very well attended. We've started putting together educational webinars that are members only. we've adopted a model code of ethics. And if you go to nsitsp.org and go to the About section, one of the things you'll see there is the history of all of this, plus the code of ethics. And we are member-driven from the start. So early on, the membership and some of the committees made some requests of the board. And even though the board was like, well, I think we should discuss it, they decided, we'll discuss it after we implement what the members want, and then we will ask those committees if they'd like to have a further discussion of it. So literally from the get-go, we are not driven from the top down, as many organizations are. We're driven from the bottom up, from the members up to the board of directors. Our vision, as we adopted a couple of years ago, is to provide pathways to establish high standards in ethics and to improve the perception and credibility of the IT industry. Our vision is to be the voice of the industry defining the standards for professionalism in IT services. So that's kind of what we're doing and what we're supposed to be doing. And the way I like to say it is that whenever somebody's talking about us, we want a seat at the table, whether those are lobbyists, legislators, members of the media. One of the things that we're putting together, and the marketing committee and the legislative committee have done amazing work on this. We want to begin creating resources, for example, so that the media, when the next story happens, the next big attack happens, we will be able to provide them with video and text and the basic elements that they need to put together a story that says, here's what RMM means, here's what IT consultants do today, here's what a managed service provider is, here's what ransomware is. We'll give them enough that they can put together a little story and a little bit of education, and then give the news. And in a perfect world, they would then talk to their local MSP and say, hey, we put together this story, we need a 7-second quote for the end of the story. And this is the kind of thing that you have to prepare for before it happens. The only thing we know for sure, it absolutely will happen again, and we need to be there. In 2021, we were not there, and the media ran whatever the hell story they wanted to run and said a lot of really stupid stuff about our industry because they simply didn't know. And that needs to not happen again. So going forward, we want to participate in what the future of our industry looks like. And the way that I put it is that you can either let this happen to you, or you can participate in whatever the future looks like, whether that's legislation, working with insurance companies, educating the media, educating our own members so they know how to talk to the media. We put on a webinar last month that, as far as I know, is the first in our industry. We put on a webinar training our members on how to talk to the media, how to formulate a message and go forward with that. And we're in the process of putting together another media training that I happen to have a connection, and we're going to get it for free, but it's normally something that companies like GoPro pay $15,000 or $20,000 for. So we are working hard to educate our members to actively participate in their own well-being. I love this quote. It is not enough to stare up the steps. We need to step up the stairs. And that's where we are in our industry. It is enough to say, look, I got all these problems and I don't know that I have a solution to it. But at the end of the day, we can find a solution, but we have to work together as a group. And I don't have the answers, and I don't pretend to have the answers. My goal is to get this group together and get us organized so we can step in the right direction. And that is exactly where we are today. Please take down my email, scan that QR code. Joining as a business starts at $150 a year, which is the cheapest thing that you can buy in this industry. And that allows you to have a voice, to sit on a committee, to vote in our elections. And it allows all of your employees to be non-voting members, but to be associate members, access to all of our websites, all of our blogs, all of our internal forums, and sit in on any webinars that we do. So it's a ridiculously cheap thing that you can do today, and I would very much appreciate it if you would join us. And if you don't like what we're doing, join us sit on a committee and change what we're doing. And with that, I'll be very happy to take any questions that you have.
I'll start.
All right.
You were talking about the 9 pillars, and one of them that really caught my attention was just the first one. You're talking about profit. I know a lot of us, you mentioned Paul Dipple. A lot of us are, part of like Evolve, and we have accountability groups when they teach our industry, our companies how to be a profitable MSP. It's always nice to complement that with something else. As far as like the resources that are available from you guys, is there anything that correlates to that? And so, okay, these are specific guidelines or specific things that you can do in order to help with profitability or be a more profitable, MSP.
So today, where we stand today, is that the National Society doesn't feel like we're the people who should be certifying you on things or educating you. Maybe someday, but again, this is, as in the evolution of an industry, you have to recognize where you are, right? What I think is most appropriate today is we're beginning the process of saying, look, we're going to have a certain badge level for people who've got some endorsements from their clients who demonstrate, hey, these are good people to do business with. And then the next step will be to begin looking at all the training programs that are out there and saying, okay, let's authorize that some of these are recognized as good for continuing education credits, and building a system where, like right now, if you join NSITSP, your profile is public. So you can point your clients to it and say, I belong to this professional association. Here's our code of ethics, right? And they will see that you've got a badge that says, oh, you've got some client endorsements here that are recognized by this national society. And then eventually, with luck, by this time next year, there'll be notices there that, oh, you've taken so many continuing hours of education, that you've met these requirements. And we'll create different, badge levels, basically. I don't necessarily think of it as gamification, but you know what I mean. And the idea is that we ourselves need to recognize each other as being, professionals, that we recognize these are the things that professionals do. They go to school and they learn about this and they get certified, whether it's by Cisco, Sonic, Wall, Third Tier, Eric Simpson or whatever. There's lots of education out there, and we don't fill a gap by providing more education. But if we can help you to find education, that will be a part of what we'll do, is build a database of what kinds of things do you need training on. And some of it's technical, but a lot of it, to be honest, the parts that are going to keep you profitable is not technical, it's business related. I will say, our webinars are also beginning to be quite educational on the business front as well. And we've just started doing members-only webinars. And all of those are recorded and they're in the member resources area. So if you join today, you could go get that media training that I mentioned.